Board members, if we can take our seats and we'll get started.
You can look through this, let me know, I just need to do it.
I don't think I see any elected officials tonight. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Just a few announcements. Mr. McMillan nor Mr. Kelly will be in attendance this evening. And also, I wanted to announce that county commissioners and our board will meet with our state legislators this Friday, January 17th, to discuss the upcoming legislative session. The event will begin with discussion between commissioners and legislators at 11, followed by lunch at noon, and discussion between our board members and legislators after lunch. The event will be held at the Crown Plaza, located at 401 West Summit Hill Drive. I'm not sure exactly which room, but there will be a room reserved.
Across from the restaurant.
Yeah, there'll be a sign. Also, for January 22nd at 1:30 p.m., we have a policy review meeting in the mezzanine conference room of the Andrew Johnson building, and the agenda and documentation will be shared within the next few days. The same day, we have a joint education committee meeting on Wednesday, January 22nd at 4 p.m. in the Andrew Johnson building on the first floor boardroom. We do have several changes to our agenda this evening. Board members, you should have received an email this morning explaining the addition of item 5C6 regarding 2 agreements with Winter Guard International for Hardin Valley Academy. If approved, this will allow Hardin Valley to host 2 band competition fundraising events at the school on February 15th and 22nd. If you have questions, those should be directed to Mr. Dupler prior to the vote on the consent agenda items. It has been added to the consent agenda. A finalized list of proposed legislative priorities for 2020 has been added to your agenda. It is item 9B for your consideration. Also, since we normally do recognitions at the front of our agenda, I just wanted to remind you that we will be recognizing our bus drivers at the end of our agenda this evening. I forgot the pledge. I skipped right over it. Okay, we're going to break here. Keep those changes in mind. We're going to break here, and we're going to ask Ms. Bounds to lead us in the moment of silence and the pledge. I apologize. Thank you.
Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I do apologize that I forgot. Just jumped right into it. Okay. And keeping those changes to our agenda in mind, do we have any other requested changes to the agenda? Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Ms. Coatney.
Item 5, consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Hill, a second by Mr. Norman. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 6A, approve second reading of new Knox County Board of Education Policy C-231, surveillance, photograph, video retention, and viewing.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
7A, approve State of Tennessee Department of Education 2019 Alternative Breakfast Mini Grants in the total amount of $12,600 for implementation of an alternative breakfast model at Bearden, Farragut, and Halls High Schools.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Bounds. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
7B, approve Knoxville TVA employee credit union Simply Smart grants. in the total amount of $23,463.60 for 16 Knox County Schools high schools.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
7C, approve ExxonMobil Educational Alliance Program Grant in the amount of $500 for Carnes Middle School designated to the area of math science.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Hill, a second by Mr. Norman. Discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
7D, approve 2020 Target Field Trip Grant amount in the amount of $700 for Mount Olive Elementary School to be used for a first and third grade student trip to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park Ranger Station.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Christie, a second by Mr. Norman. Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
7E, approve Walmart Community Grant in the amount of $2,500 for Whittle Springs Middle School to be used for purchasing Hispanic, multicultural, and diverse books and other library needs.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Owen and a second by Mr. Norman. Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
8A, approve a contract with the Lewis Group Architects Incorporated, PC, at a cost of $1,085,000 plus reimbursable expenses for the design of a new Northwest Elementary School.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman and a second by Ms. Hill. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. 8B, approve contract to audit accounts with Pew CPAs for audit of Knox County Schools' internal school funds for the period beginning July 1, 2019 and ending June 30, 2020 at a cost of $113,722 using general purpose funds.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman and a second by Ms. Owen. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9A, approve tenure for eligible teachers.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9B, discussion and action regarding 2020 Knox County Board of Education legislative priorities.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Satterfield. Mr. Norman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had some questions about the wording of the letter. Is this the final draft of what we're going to send on?
Yes, that is the proposed draft. But there were some minor changes that were sent out today and that are attached to the agenda.
Okay. If we wanted to suggest some changes to what's being sent, what would be the proper procedure?
You would just need to discuss those changes and get a motion and make a motion.
Okay. Well, my problem with the letter is probably summarized in tone, in what I would consider somewhat of an abrasive tone. I've been on a funding body myself, and it's I think the letter sounds to me more like a demand than it does a request in certain parts, not in all of it. But I'm just, I'm just a little bit hesitant to put my name on something that I think has, it just functions possibly as something that could hinder what we wish to do rather than, So I'm just throwing that out. I don't know whether anybody else might have an observation like that. If I'm totally off base, then we'll just let it ride. But
Are there specific areas that you would like to recommend a change?
Yes. Let me look this second. Well, the things that I would change if I was composing the letter, I certainly would. I think I would soften up the words such as "we oppose." I think "we oppose" is something that could serve to be an irritant, or it's just, to me. Here's the issue. When the school board comes to the funding body and their continuing refrain is more money, more money, more money for all these things, I think that gets lost. I think it loses significance because it's heard all the time. So those are to me, the draft is demanding. It is it's repetitive in terms of the theme, and so and it's somewhat abrasive in terms of some of the words that are used. That's my opinion.
Okay, why don't we get some other discussion, and then, I would suggest for that particular sentence, we could really delete the sentence, and the opening sentence states it positively. So let's come back to your thought in a moment, Ms. Owen.
I think it might change the tone if we just switched the local control of schools section and moved it below the funding for public education, because the funding for public education statement is a more positive statement, that we believe it's crucial for the future of our state that the legislature invests more in public education to adequately fund our public schools. So that's less oppositional.
Okay.
So maybe opening with that section and moving the local control down lower. And I think the local control issue is not as big an issue this time, so that could maybe even go down further.
Okay.
And by that, I mean, I don't think it is actively being pursued right now in the legislature.
Which one? I'm sorry.
Local control.
Okay,
I don't
yes.
think they're working to replace boards right now.
Right.
That
Okay.
was-
And I do think we could delete the second sentence in that section. It essentially does reiterate the first point, but in a negative way. So we can delete that sentence if someone would want to make that motion. And just a reminder that this is really just a statement of our priorities. It's not necessarily, we will take this personally to our meeting on Friday. So it's not really a letter being sent. So that's why it's not in a letter form. Anything else, Ms. Owen?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, Ms. Bounds?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And it doesn't matter to me. I understand the intent of wanting it to be very positive instead of negative. And I don't see a problem with that, but I also don't have a problem with deleting that sentence. If it would, Mr. Norman that would be his desire. I do think, I'm a little concerned about moving it under funding, because when I see we oppose any efforts to diminish or impede local control, and like Jennifer said, there's not an effort to do away with local school boards right now in the legislature, but we did see a lot of our local control diminished last session when they authorized the charter committee to authorize and approve charter schools. So we lost, so I don't see that as much as a funding issue as I do maybe negating some of our authority to decide which schools are best for our county and whether those charter schools are needed. So I think it depends on the person that's reading it and how they interpret it. Somebody might be offended by oppose, somebody else may not. So I'm okay either way, but I don't think it's just related to funding. I think there's a lot of other control issues that are coming before the legislature.
Okay, Ms. Owen?
I should say that more clearly. Rather than under the heading funding, I just meant take that section and put it below the funding section so that it's not part of funding. It's just not the first thing that is read.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Norman?
Okay, thank you. The only other thing that I think would soften the tone and might add to its receptiveness or whatever is like when we're talking about vouchers, rather than have the header there, vouchers, would it be possible for us to change that to school choice? And then we can have the same verbiage under the category, but it just, I don't know, it's just like, you know, poking somebody in the eye right off the bat when I see vouchers. You know, it's just, you know, I don't know. That's just the way I see it. Thanks.
Okay, Ms. Bounds?
That I feel more strongly about, and I don't care how we word it. It doesn't have to lead with opposition, and I know vouchers is a very controversial title, but you have to keep in mind that in trying to pass the vouchers, they've changed the naming of it multiple times, and I don't think school choice is adequate. I can totally support the parents' right to choose parochial, private, public, homeschooling, but that's a whole different issue than educational savings accounts or vouchers. So maybe if we could come to a compromise and just reword it and not put opposition to, but I think let's call it by its name. It is a voucher.
Yeah. Ms. Owen?
If we just take out opposition to, that would take out the oppositional language and still keep in the school vouchers. It could also have a softer tone if we took the last sentence and moved the last sentence in that paragraph and made it the first sentence, that the board supports school choice within the public school district. That way it's a more positive statement.
That's a good suggestion. Mm-hmm. Okay, can we hear some thoughts on changing the title of that from opposition to school vouchers to school vouchers? Does people have opinions on that? That's okay. We're
I think
agreeable.
it actually puts it more in line with the other.
Well, it does. That's what I noticed. We don't have we have subjects on every other one except for that one, so I think it does. I think it's more uniform if we take it out. Anyone opposed to that? Okay. Okay. So can I just do we have other changes that we'd like to see? Okay, can I recap what I have and let's see if we're all on the same page? We still need to kind of decide if we want to move the first section, local control of schools. I believe we've all said that we need to delete the second sentence. If anybody has an objection, please just let me know as we go through these. We need to delete the second sentence. We had a suggestion to move that section, keeping the title, local control of schools, just below the first paragraph so that it becomes the second thing after funding. So is that okay with everybody, or do we want to keep it first? Is that okay? Okay, so that will move, that section, including only the one statement, will move between funding and vouchers, and then the title will be changed to school vouchers, and we will move the last sentence of that paragraph to the beginning. Okay, so if someone wants to make a motion to.
I made the original substitute for amendment.
So, Mr. Norman, if you'd like to make a motion to adopt these priorities with the stated changes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Norman, a second by Ms. Hill. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Is that it? Okay, that completes our agenda. And just so the audience knows, we met last Wednesday to go through and discuss these items, so that's why there was very little discussion on these items. We would like to now recognize our wonderful bus drivers. If I could have Mr. Ryan Dillingham come forward to introduce this part of our agenda.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. I'd like to ask our Customer Service Manager, Kathy McCoy, to join me. She'll be taking us home from here.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. McCoy.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair Susan Horn, Superintendent Bob Thomas, and distinguished board members for allowing us the opportunity to come and recognize these bus drivers in this presentation. Tonight, we're here to recognize a very special group of people, our Knox County school bus drivers. Currently, Knox County Schools contracts with independent service providers who operate more than 340 buses on all instructional days and travel in excess of 20,000 miles per day. For many students, drivers are the first adult face they see as they begin their day, and also the last before they arrive home. While safety is our #1 priority, the role our bus drivers play in setting a positive tone for the day is invaluable to a student's overall attitude toward learning. While we regret that a lot of our drivers are still finishing routes and parking buses, we do have a few that were able to join us tonight, so we'd like to recognize them. The first group, they have at least 10 years of service, and if they'll come forward, Ryan has a certificate. We've awarded them with a pin already. So Ronnie Sylvie. Knox Williams. Oh, you're going to take a picture? Okay. We'll go one at a time. There we go. All right, so with 10 years of service. Next, with 20 years of service, is Deanne Brown. With 30 years of service, Tammy Williams. They used to let them start really early. Wait till you see this next one. Hear this next one. And finally, I would like to recognize one other driver, a very special driver who was unable to attend tonight, Anna Cox. Once Anna finished her bus duties, she had grandson duties. She has a true passion for serving children and has devoted 50 years of her life to the students of Knox County Schools. Please join me in celebrating this hardworking group.
I'm getting ambushed.
So much fun when we get to recognize wonderful people who really do add so much to the lives of our students. So thank you again for being here, and we appreciate you. All right. Okay, Miss Bab, can we have public forum?
Yeah, sorry, public forum now. Would Todd Shelton come up? Is Todd here? Okay. Okay. Tanya Coates.
She's here. She signed up.
Okay. Hetty Collins. And Ms. Collins, please state your name and your address, and you have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you. I'm Hetty Collins, and my home address is 504 Brooktree Road here in Knoxville, 37919. I'm a fourth grade teacher at West Hills Elementary School. My colleagues, whom share my feelings that I'm about to read, I'd like to invite you to please stand. I am gravely concerned that the expectations our school district has set upon our kindergarten students are causing feelings of frustration and failure, leading these 5-year-olds to not even want to come to school. First, the skills on the kindergarten progress report, which is 3 pages long, are very inappropriate as far as developmentally appropriate for 5-year children. By October, these 5-year-olds are expected to count to 100 by 1s, 5s, and 10s, identify problems and design solutions in early engineering, and use historical awareness with social studies concepts. By December, these same 5-year-olds are expected to be able to identify the main topic and the key details of the text, and be able to add details to strengthen their own writing. I want you to consider the damage that these unrealistic expectations are causing in the attitudes and personalities of our youngest students. Second, our kindergarten children are over-tested. Beginning tomorrow, these 5-year-olds are going to spend 51 of their next 80 and 1/2 school days being tested. That is 63% of the rest of their kindergarten days taking a test. Third, I believe all the testing we are requiring is repetitive and unnecessary. In August, our 5-year-olds do a screener to determine their class placement. Ames Web Plus, which is our district's universal screener in both reading and math, is also given in August. These tests are administered one-on-one with the teacher, and on paper say that they should take 3 minutes and 8 minutes. However, this time does not include reading the directions or answering the children's questions, nor does it take into account that there are 21 other 5-year-old children within that classroom being expected to work independently and quietly. This requires much redirecting from the teacher in between the tests. Therefore, in actuality, these tests take 7 to 8 minutes and 12 to 14 minutes per child. This test is re-administered in January and May. The Kindergarten Progress Report is a three-page document that is not available online like all the other grade levels report cards. Much of this has to be done one-on-one and is repeated every 9 weeks. If a student masters a skill on that progress report, it still has to be tested each time it's given for the remainder of the year. Portfolio testing is also another assessment that is done, and this is done one-on-one and takes place in September, February, March, April, and May. It seems realistic to me to think that we could administer one reliable, developmentally appropriate test, which would provide all the data that kindergarten parents, kindergarten teachers, and first grade teachers need to make educationally sound decisions for each of our students. One point I must also include is that these unrealistic expectations and the massive amount of testing is carrying over to our elementary, middle, and high school students. We have more 504 plans being written for elementary students due to anxiety and depression. Suicide is the number 2 cause of death for ages 10 to 19 in our state of Tennessee. The pattern we are beginning in kindergarten is creating children who are so overwhelmed and so frustrated they feel lost and incapable. Finally, I cannot fail to mention the effects of these things on our kindergarten teachers. I want to read you the words written by one of our West Hills kindergarten teachers. Our students are at the most critical age in all of elementary school for developing strong foundations, fostering a love of literature, and building a strong understanding of numeracy. We simply can't do it. We can't go on nature walks. We cannot raise butterflies from caterpillars. We cannot plant seeds to grow for Mother's Day. We're not able to do the lovely, beautiful experiences that kindergartners deserve and yearn. In West Hills, our kindergarten classes have 22 children in them. These teachers are beyond frustrated with feeling like they're running a hamster wheel rather than being able to share a love of learning and exploration with their students. I ask you, our Board of Education, to create a team that will look at kindergarten progress reports, the required assessments, and our large class sizes. Our youngest learners, our 5-year-olds, deserve far better than their school days, what their current school days look like. And I'm afraid that unless you look into these issues, anxiety, that's my last sentence, anxiety, depression, suicide within Knox County schools is going to continue to increase, and our children deserve better.
Thank you for
hearing me.
Thank you, and thank you for all the West Hills teachers for coming out. Constance Every.
My name is Constance Every, 301 North Charlie Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee. I hope District 2 and District 3 will pay attention while I speak. So, as we've already heard from the teachers, there are many things that are going on in our educational system that is very disturbing. We are still faced with multiple challenges. We are still getting a superintendent's report about how we are still lacking in certain educational categories, which we know is reading and math. That was depressing to listen to. I had no idea that that was going on for kindergartners, because when I went to kindergarten, those were not things we were doing. We were doing butterflies. We were planting seeds. We were making Valentine cards and other things of necessity, which was capacitating to our creativity and our growth and development spaces. Crime shame that's going on in kindergarten right now. But the real reason I came here to speak was because the concern is still also what part of the frustration I think teachers are dealing with is the lack of pay. It is very frustrating to have such standards of testing and educational requirements, and you are still not able to afford necessary resources in the classroom to even adequately be able to provide those restrictions or such high standards of educational goals. It's sad to still hear that teachers are still spending out of their own pocket to provide basic resources. I am not understanding with all the funding that we're getting, you are claiming with this move to TVA, you're going to save in the millions of dollars to put into resources for the children. Why are teachers still paying for glue, crowns, pencils, scissors, and other items out of pocket. And yes, some children can afford it. And yes, there are plenty of children that cannot. Yes, there are organizations like the Urban League who hosts these mass pre-back-to-school events to get supplies and other things out. But like we just heard, children go to school for 10 months. Those supplies and equipment do run out eventually. Or, as we know, children lose and misplace things constantly. So we still need to evaluate teachers' pay and, additionally, the increase of budget to resources for the classrooms. The other big thing is, as we know, the TVA move. I find it very, very concerning, as Commissioner Buller pointed out, you are voted constituents, and barricading yourself inside of a federal building with higher standards of security is definitely not making you accessible or easily accessible to your voting constituents. Some of you are up for election, and I am very excited about that part. So keep heed, as we've been saying. We need people who are going to do the right thing and take these offices and keep in mind of what you do it for. Education of children. It ain't even really even about the parents. It is education of our children. They are supposed to have every opportunity in the world possible that we can give them so they can go be successful, productive members of our society. Keep in mind, one day we're all going to get old, and these very children are going to take some of these positions to make decisions about our lives one day. Wouldn't it be a crime shame that we failed them today and they held a grudge against us for tomorrow? You don't want that type of demeanor on your children. And then the last part, the surveillance thing. I find it very interesting that, yes, we know litigation, right? So there is definitely legal things that says, ooh, you get a lawyer, you got access to anything you want in the sun because the lawyer can go through his process. But there are definitely numerous, like what we call squashing things at the lowest level concept, that these are what we're talking about. A parent has an issue with their child, something happens, we have video recordings to basically say what did or didn't take place. I don't see why this additional step of litigation is placed in front of that, especially if the parent is willing to possibly even work on the issue just by having the evidence to prove whether it was their child or not. I don't understand the necessity of this additional piece of litigation in front of that. Like I said, some people don't want to go to court. Some people can't even afford to go to court. So if there's an option to resolve it at the lowest level, meaning like let's go into the room and take a look at the video footage, then why would we add where we got to go through this extra step where you got to submit a piece of paper and you got to have the administrative person here and it's got to be this and all of that? We're supposed to be doing things at the simplest basic level. Once again, we're talking about children that we are basically creating criminalization for by the way we even handle situations like this. I am asking you all to turn on your brains. That's what you're here for. Some point you campaign it to your constituents that you had the capacity to perform this job at the given rate of what we were requesting as your voters. Where is that accountability, integrity to what you stuck on oath for and from day one on your campaign? You owe it. You do. You owe it to people. So I'm going to ask again, board, consider some of the decisions you are making and those that are coming in the future. These children are the future of tomorrow. And you better believe, as much as you may think they don't forget, some of them will never forget. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public forum.
Thank you, and we are adjourned.